Welcome to Lakshman Biology. Now we'll discuss about test cross. Test cross. Before going to see about the test cross, we will see why we have to do the test cross. In Mendel monohybrid cross, what he did, he crossed the homozygous dominant plant with the homozygous recessive plant. Then after crossing, he got the F1 generation. These are parent plants. After crossing the parent plants, he got the F1 generation. In F1 generation, all plants are tall plants. Tall plants. They contain heterozygous dominant condition. All are tall only. Tall plants. All are tall plants only. Tall plant, tall plant, tall plant, tall plant. Next, he taken the offsprings of F1 generation and he crossed the offsprings of F1 generation. When he crossed the offsprings of F1 generation, there is a formation of F2 generation. These are the gametes and these are F2 generation plants. Capital T, capital T, capital T, small t, capital T, capital small t, small t, small t. In F2 generation, there is a formation of two types of phenotypes. First one is tall and second one is dwarf. If you see the tall plants may contain homozygous dominant genotype or it may contain homozygous recessive genotype also. If you see capital T, homozygous dominant, capital T, small t, capital T, small t. These are also from the tall plant. These are heterozygous dominant. There is a two possible genotypes in the tall plant. It may be homozygous dominant or it may be heterozygous dominant. If it is the dwarf plant, which happen only during homozygous recessive condition. Hence, externally, if you see from externally, we can see three tall plants, one dwarf plant. Three tall plants. If you see these three tall plants in which few are homozygous dominant, few are heterozygous dominant. If it is the dwarf plant, which contain only homozygous recessive. Hence, there is no problem with the dwarf plant. If it is the dwarf, the genotype is homozygous recessive only. But there is a problem with the heterozygous dominant plants and the homozygous dominant plants. Means there is a problem with the tall plant. From externally, we cannot say that those tall plants contain homozygous dominant, those plants contain heterozygous dominant. Hence, to know about the genotype of F2 generation tall plants, is it belongs to homozygous dominant or is it belongs to heterozygous dominant? To know about the genotype of F2 generation tall plant, we have to do the test cross. That only test cross. If you see the test cross, here based on this experiment, we can say that test cross is cross between F2 generation tall plant, F2 generation tall plant, or F2 generation dominant plant, dominant phenotype plant, dominant plant. It may be homozygous dominant or it may be heterozygous dominant. Cross between F2 generation tall plant with homozygous recessive plant, homozygous recessive plant. Homozygous recessive plant. Here homozygous recessive plant is dwarf plant. That is only test cross. To know about the F2 generation tall plant genotype or dominant plant genotype, what we will do? We will take the F2 generation dominant plant and we will cross with the homozygous recessive plant. Okay, dominant character. Based on the type of trait that we will use in the monohybrid cross, the dominant characters are different. One example, if you see, okay, this one if you take, this is the tall plant. This is the tall plant. We have to know the genotype of tall plant. The tall plant contains genotype either capital T or capital T small t. Okay. Based on the result that we will get after the crossing, we have to see we can get the idea of genotype of tall plant. See, there is a two possibilities for the tall plant, that may be homozygous dominant or heterozygous dominant. In case if you cross this tall plant with homozygous recessive plant, what is the result? See, dwarf plant. Dwarf plant contain genotype small t. Hence, all the gametes which are formed from the dwarf plant contain small t only. There is another possibility also there. Sometime if you cross the homozygous recessive plant with the tall plant, if tall plant is heterozygous dominant, we will get the different result. But always homozygous recessive plant will give only one type of gametes which contain small t. Next, if tall plant is homozygous dominant, it will give similar type of gametes with all dominant alleles. Next, if we see the offsprings which are formed, that is heterozygous dominant, heterozygous dominant, heterozygous dominant, heterozygous dominant, all tall. Heterozygous dominant means all plants are tall, all tall plants. After crossing the dominant plant of F2 generation with the dwarf plant, if you get the all tall plants, next generation if you get all tall plants, it will indicate the given genotype is, okay, if it is all tall, if all plants are tall, the given genotype is homozygous dominant, capital T, capital T. Then in case if it is the heterozygous dominant, what is the result? Here capital T, small t, capital T, small t, capital T, small t, small t, small t, small t, small t. See, if the given generation, if 50% plants are tall, if 50% plants are dwarf, see these two are the tall, heterozygous dominant, these are the dwarf, homozygous recessive. If the F2 generation contain both tall and dwarf, both tall and dwarf, F1 generation are the offsprings of these two parents. If it contains few tall plants, few dwarf plants, that will indicate the given genotype is heterozygous dominant. That is about test cross. Test cross is used to know about genotype of F2 generation dominant plant. If F2 generation dominant plant is homozygous dominant, the next generation all is dominant plants only, tall plants, dominant plants. If F2 generation dominant plant is heterozygous genotype, heterozygous dominant genotype, then the next generation will form few tall plants and few dwarf plants. Thank you.